My name's Darrin and I'm an alcoholic. One of the things that I like to do when I first get up here is I look around and I want to see how many people, by the raise of hand, how many people was out there running and gunning with me. You know, that's something that's an eye-opener for a lot of us is, I went and spent some time in jail, and I don't remember any of my buddies coming to see me in jail. Never once. I don't even remember my family. But as we sit here today, we get different celebrations of life actually in recovery. My sobriety date is December 1st of 2000. And for that, I'm forever grateful. I'll go back a little bit. Before that, I was brought up in a fairly good-sized family. I got four sisters and two brothers. And I was thinking about this yesterday. I remember, Dad went to prison when I was 8 years old, and for the first time. And coincidentally, that's when I started smoking pot. But I remember Mom had to work, and my older sisters and brother were to make sure that the household was taken care of, And I still remember this to this very day. Almost every night, Mom had come home from work, and my sisters and brothers would say, "Mom, would you have Darrin get his chores done? We've told him and told him and told him, and he just won't do it." And Mom would walk in and she'd say, "Son, would you get your chores done?" And I got up and did them. And they're like, "How do you do that? How do you do that, Mom? How do you get him to do something?" Well, Mom would just say, "Darrin, will you?" That was it. My brothers and sisters would say, "Get off your ass and get your work done." And I'd tell them to go to hell at 8 years old. So I knew I was defiant right out of the gate, right? So right around the age of 8 years old is when I started really rebelling quite a bit. And my mom and dad had split up, and we was over at my buddy's house, and all of a sudden we heard all of these tires squealing and people screaming and yelling, and I look out the window, and I see my dad face down on the ground with shotguns to the back of his head. And it was the SWAT team. And they arrested my dad, and my older brother and my sister went to get their car, because that's the car that Dad was driving. And because they went in and interrupted the police, they got thrown to the ground, shotguns to their head. I don't like authority. And that's probably where it started, is I don't really like authority figures. I was basically raised in Utah State Penitentiary in the family orientation, but I was raised there. I went there every weekend for most of my life. Got married when I was 16 years old, met my wife when I was 15, got married when I was 16, joined the Navy when I was 17. By the time I was 18 years old, I had already been in, I don't know how many different brigs. Every time that they'd let me out on liberty, I'd drink and I'd wind, and I always blamed it on them fucking Marines. The Marines, if they didn't search me every goddamn time, I wouldn't go. I went to the brig every night that I went out in the Philippines, in Guam. Well, Guam I didn't. That should have been an indication to me, because when we pulled into Guam, they told us we had 4 hours liberty. And they said, "Do not miss ship's movement." I knew I was going to miss ship's movement if I got off that boat. I just knew it, but it wasn't a problem, right? And we actually had some sailors on there that didn't make the ship. They were sitting down at the dock when the ship pulled out. They missed ship's movement, and that's not a good thing when you're in the military. So we went to the Philippines. By the time I had gotten in the Navy, I had one daughter, my wife, And in the first year, we had our second daughter, and I was an E3 at the time, which is very low on the scale of all of the ranks in the military. But I remember me and my older brother were both on the ship, and we didn't get along too well. Every time we'd go out on the land, one of us wound up in the hospital. Both of us always wound up in the brig. I remember one night, I think we was in Singapore, and Singapore was a high dollar place, man. You couldn't get messed up for under $100. And I got tanked, and I came back on the ship, and I heard somebody on the other side of the berthing area say, "Mitchell, you can't handle your alcohol." And I climbed out of bed. My older brother knew, oh shit, shit's gonna hit the fan. My older brother climbed out of the bed, and I thought it was the guy that said it that came to my bed. And so I grabbed my brother and started just blasting him. Everybody in the berthing area got me upstairs, and my older brother held me by the throat and just drilled me, knocked 5 teeth out, and I went out. And when I came up, everybody's cheering him on. Thank God you finally got him out. Jesus Christ, what's up with this guy? And they turned around just as I grabbed my brother by the shirt, and I had my teeth knocked out. I said, "You ain't shit, motherfucker." And I grabbed a 20-pound sledgehammer and I went after him. He come walking through a doorway as I grabbed that 20-pound, and I was coming down like this, and it hit the right above his head on the metal beam, or he would have been dead, and I'd have been in a lot of trouble. Things like that went on throughout the whole Navy while I was in there. One of the things that was at one of the meetings this last week, I was talking, and I heard somebody talking about just one drink. See, we used to take a pitcher of beer, was our mug, mine and my brother's, and we just drink that pitcher until it was gone. So you can tell, for my whole life, I was pretty much defiant. I was an alcoholic. I didn't like authority figures. As soon as I got out of the Navy, I just decided to transfer into the Army because I couldn't. I'm a gunner's mate from the Navy, and I shot great big guns, and they don't have those big guns here in Utah. And I was on reserves, so I transferred over to the 116th Engineer in the Army. And you guys, I got to tell you, I loved drinking. I loved it. I didn't feel a goddamn thing till the next day. And then I'd just drink some more, and I didn't have to feel again. And I was living in Salt Lake, and I come down here to my brother-in-law's house, and I'm like, "Dude, I'd love to drink with you, but I got to get up and go to the Army in the morning." And he says, "Come here." And I said, "What's up?" And he says, "Come here." I went in with him, and he gave me a little line. And let me tell you what, dude, I got a full night's sleep in 20 minutes. I was up and ready to go, and I was like, holy shit. Get some more of that. That's really good stuff. So in the late 80s, middle 80s, late 80s, I started running with a crowd of people that made their own stuff. And we were able to get it at our will, anytime we wanted. Well, I remember telling one of my buddies, because they all told me I was an alcoholic, and I said, "Yeah, whatever, so what?" I told one of my buddies, I said, "Dude, I found the cure for alcoholism. He said, yeah, what's that? And I said, meth. They need to put a bowl of that shit in the center table of every one of these AA meetings, and nobody will ever have to drink again. He said, Darrin, I think you need to start drinking again. But back to when I was in the Navy, a lot of shit happened. You know, my grandfather died. I wasn't very close to my grandfather until right before I went overseas. My grandfather died. My brother died. He was on shore duty. A lot of shit was going on. I hated my brother. I wanted to get home to my grandpa. I couldn't get home to my grandpa because my brother was AWOL. And I drank. I drank a lot. And when we got back from overseas, I got word that my dad was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I said, what the hell's schizophrenia? And they said, well, you got multiple personality kind of thing, disorder, whatever. And I was like, dude, when I drink, I get different. I think I'm schizophrenic. I think that runs in my family, and I think it's hereditary. And so I went up to the captain, and I asked the captain, I says, hey, I got to go see the psychiatrist. And he says, why? What's going on? And I said, I think I'm schizophrenic. And he says, really? Yeah. He says, all right. So he sent me to the psychiatrist, and I go in, and the psychiatrist says, what's going on? And I said, I think I'm schizophrenic. And he says, let's answer a few questions first. And I said, all right, but my dad's already been diagnosed. I'm pretty sure that's what I got. So I answered a bunch of these questions, and at the end, so I was 18 years old, 17, 18 years old, right in between there. And the psychiatrist says, I've got some good news and some bad news. And I said, what's the good news? And he says, you're not schizophrenic. And I said, well, that's good. I said, what's the chances of me getting it? And he says, it's not very good. The kind that your dad has is not hereditary. He said, but you are a phase 3 alcoholic. Now, that was diagnosed when I was right around 18 years old. And so I left there, and I went to a bar, because I'm alcoholic. And that's what a good alcoholic does. And so I go into this bar, and I sit down, I belly up to the bar right next to the captain. And the captain says, so what did he say? I says, he told me I was a phase 3 alcoholic. And he says, bartender, he says, get me a double Jack on the rocks. And he says, let me show you how an alcoholic drinks. And so we sat there and we commenced to be best friends. Me and the captain of the ship and the Commodore who was above him were all drinking buddies. I didn't see a problem with that. I thought it was really a good thing. I didn't see a problem with being an alcoholic. I really didn't. I didn't see no problem with anything that was going on. So what, I wound up in the brig a few times, every time. So what if I had my teeth knocked out? So what if I had anger issues? Everybody does. And I get out of the Navy, and I'm not even 20 years old, already diagnosed an alcoholic. When I got out, they had recommended that I go talk to the re-enlistment company. And I went in, and a drunken sailor is a good sailor, so I figured, what the hell, I was there, I'd arrived. And when they was giving me my discharge papers, they said that I was a 3.8 sailor. It's a 3.8, because it's kind of graded like your grades were in school. 4.0 is the best, right? And they says, yeah, you was a 3.8. And I said, what happened to the other two? They said, well, about that. They said, you have a hard time calling somebody sir. I said, so? Military conduct. You lost 2 points because you wouldn't call him sir. I said, I'll take it. Not a big deal. I remember one time I was on the ship, and when you're in the military and you're outdoors, you have to wear a hat, and you're supposed to salute any of the officers. And I was on the fantail of the ship, and I turned around, and remember, me and my captain are drinking buddies, and he come walking down the ladder as I was going up the ladder, and I said, hey, what's up, Cappy? And my wife looks at me, and she says, aren't you supposed to call him sir? And I said, yeah, but we're friends. And I never did. That's why I got a 3.8. But when I got out, they offered me, and this was back in 80, had to be 85. And in the 80s, when they offer a reenlistment bonus, they offered me a $50,000 reenlistment bonus. But they had a condition on it. And I said, what's the condition? And they says, we need you to do Navy Alcohol Recovery Center for 6 months. Nope. I ain't got a problem. They said, well, we think you do. And so they handed me a bottle with 1,000 antabuse tablets in it. And they said, would you at least just take these one a day until they're gone? I said, I'll take them. I took them and I dumped them in the ocean. I don't know how many fish are out there, but I dumped them in the ocean. I rolled up a joint and I walked off the ship to never return. I get out and I go into business for myself. I'm a body man by trade, and I open up a shop, and I figure if I open up a shop, nobody can tell me what to do. I'm my own boss. I can drink whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. And we did. We had a Coca-Cola machine in our body shop that was full of beer. We changed the money on it so that if people came in, and you guys, I'm here to tell you, and I'm not saying this in a proud sense. I was, between me and my brother-in-law and one of his brothers, we was drinking about 3 cases of beer a day and a good half gallon of whiskey a day with a little bit of rum here and there and, just whatever. That's what we did every day. And I didn't see a problem with that. And there was a day that my sister-in-law calls up and she says, Julie, where's Darrin? She says, he's right here. Why? They said, well, the newspaper says he's been arrested. She says, he's standing right here. I don't know what you're talking about. She says, bring the newspaper over. So she brought it over. My name's in the paper. And I'm like, what the hell? I said, maybe you better go call the police. So she goes over and she calls the police to find out what's going on. And they said, yeah, about that. Have Darrin just come in and talk to us. It's no big deal. I said, fuck you. I ain't stupid. So I called a lawyer. And I got a lawyer on the phone, and he says, what happened is they put your name in the paper a day early. I said, wow. So tomorrow I'm going to jail. He says, no, you've retained me as a lawyer. He says, I'll call him and tell him. And he tried to call him, and it was a weekend, and they wouldn't answer. And he says, lay low for the next couple of days. I said, dude, the cops are across the street from my house. They know I'm here. He said, don't leave the house. I said, they're going to come in. What the hell am I going to do? And he said, just lay low. So I laid low. I actually went in and had myself arrested. And this was back in 91. And I went to court. They says, they sentenced me on 3 counts of 1 to 15 in the Utah State Penitentiary in 1991. And I walk out in the hallway and I look at my wife and the lawyer and I'm like, why am I out here in the hallway? Why aren't they taking me to prison. And my lawyer says, you didn't hear the whole sentence. I said, well, apparently not. And he says that he dropped all of those down to 21 days in jail, $775 fine, and 3 years probation. And I said, how does that work? And he said, don't ask, just accept it. And I said, well, yeah. So they gave me 21 days, and then I immediately come up with all these excuses why I can't do 21 days. I remember asking the judge, can't I just pay a fine? And he said, wouldn't it be that easy? Just everybody that had money would just pay and get off? So he says, you got to do weekends. And he says, and I need you to have them done in the next 6 months. I said, all right. By the end of that 6 months, I had 4 days done. So I had to go in and file for an extension. And he says, I'm going to give you another 60 days to get them done. And I says, okay. After those 60 days, I still had 4 days done. And he says, you need to go in there today and get them all done. So I went in and finished them off and paid off the fine and everything. Well, I continued partying and I continued doing what I do. And while my dad was in prison, he had a stroke, and they put him in a rest home. And in 1993, he called me up on a Friday, and it was my birthday weekend. And he says, son, he says, I want to come and spend the weekend with you. I said, yeah, Dad. I says, about that, I got some friends who want me to go up to Hobble Creek. We got a party planned for my birthday. And I says, Dad, I'll come and get you Sunday morning, first thing, and we'll spend all day together, I promise. And he says, okay, son. He says, I love you. And I look at the phone like, my dad just said he loved me. I'd never heard it before. I'm not saying that he didn't say it before, but I've never heard it before. And I hung up the phone and I went up and started partying with all of my friends. Well, me and my wife came home that night, and he called me up first thing Saturday morning and said, son, I really want to come and spend the weekend with you. I said, yeah, Dad, I'll come and get you tomorrow, I promise. And he says, all right, son. He says, I love you. And I said, love you too, Dad. We didn't exchange words like that. And it wasn't that we didn't love each other. We just didn't voice it, you know. And I went up, and for whatever reason, I had a grundle of everything, so we still didn't even finish it Saturday, but I promised my dad that I'd pick him up Sunday morning first thing and spend the day with him. So I had to get home, and we actually slept in the front room on the sofa bed, and I told Julie, I said, well, we got to get up. I got to go. I promised Dad that I'd go get him, and she says, yeah, I know. So we prepared to go get him, and 7 o'clock Sunday morning, before we even woke up, there was a knock on the door. And I answered the door, and there was my Uncle Dan standing at the door. And I said, what's up, Uncle Dan? And he says, Kenny died last night. Kenny was my dad. My alcoholism. Robbed him of that last weekend on earth that he wanted to spend with me. My alcoholism. So, some of you may know these next couple of feelings: guilt, remorse. And I'd never had them so deep before in my life. So for the next 7 years, I was on a runner. I didn't give a shit about you. I didn't give a shit about me. I didn't give a shit about the law. Didn't give a shit about family. I was going to end it one way or the other. And so for 7 years, I was on a runner, hard runner. And November of 2000, Julie told me that she was filing for divorce and she was leaving me. And she was tired of the bullshit. Right before that, she had scheduled us an appointment with the counselor, and we was going for marriage counseling. And the counselor says, and he kept throwing these little puns out there, you know. He says, you know, I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. I said, yeah, but that ain't my problem. My problem's her. If she would just shut up and do what I told her to, everything would be just fine. As I'm sitting there loaded with not a big gulp cup, but one of those 44-ounce cups of soda, every time I was in there, I was just shit-faced. Julie and I had separated. I lived in Motel 6. She lived in the house. And Tom Bodette does turn off the lights if you don't pay your bill. But on December 1st, I went to the house and I told Julie, I says, because see, during this time, I got pissed off at Julie and I grabbed her by the throat and I threw her over the railing of our deck. And I was facing domestic violence charges. And I couldn't figure out how I could do something like that. I really couldn't figure out how I could do something like that to somebody that I really, really love. And we separated. She was leaving. And anyway, I went to her dad's house. I told her I was going to go talk to her dad. Her dad was a cement mason, 45-year cement mason. He was a big son of a bitch. And she says, what are you going to go there for? I said, I just got to talk to your dad. She said, all right. So I went over to his house. And I said, John, I says, I grabbed your daughter by the throat. I'm a drug addict and I'm an alcoholic. And he just looked at me and he says, get sober and everything will work out. And I'm like, that ain't what my response was that I wanted him to do. I wanted him to kick my ass. I would have done it if they'd have done that to my kid, my daughter. I'd have whooped the dog shit out of him. And that's all he said. And her mom came in, and me and her mom, man, we got along very well. That mother-in-law tale, that wasn't me and my mother-in-law. We loved each other. We got along really well. We joked with each other all the time. And she comes walking in the house, and John looks at her and says, well, Eileen, Darrin's here, says he's a drug addict and an alcoholic. And she turns around and she says, really? And I'm like, fuck, even she knows. Everybody knows. So I went through treatment, and on graduation night, you go around and you hand your coin to everybody, and they tell you how you have affected them in their short term of recovery. And I handed the coin to Julie, and at the time Julie says, you'll make somebody a good husband one day. Sorry, it won't be me. And that was on my graduation. Isn't that when shit's supposed to get better? It didn't. Not in my eyes, but I stayed sober. I lived in my house for 19 months. She lived in her house for 19 months. And after 19 months, she decided to give it another shot. We gave it another shot, and we made a run for it for a long time. But I got involved in these steps. You know, I kept coming back, and you guys kept saying, get a sponsor. Why do I want a sponsor? so that you can talk to somebody, so they can show you how to do this stuff. And I said, how did they know? They don't know nothing about me. How are they going to know how to help me? My own fucking family can't help me. My own family can't get me to do anything other than my mom. Just get a sponsor. And so I went to the meeting, and remember, I was a military boy. I don't like people getting in my face. And so I asked Jerry Horsley to sponsor me. And he was just this gruff old man, you know. And he come up and he put his nose right next to mine. And I was like, fuck. And he says, I need you to do a few things. And I said, what's that, Jerry? He says, I need you to call me every day. I need you to go to meetings and not drink and drug. And most of all, I need you to not fucking lie to me. The first two was okay. I didn't know how long I could go without lying to him, because that was just part of my life. In fact, after he started to be my sponsor, and we started doing all of the steps and things, and you know, I'm a pretty good manipulator, but he didn't let me manipulate him. And he helped me so much with the steps. The one that he had a hard time with me, and it was the same one that I had a hard time doing, was step 2. Come to believe in a power greater than yourself. Now, I've just told you guys a bunch of things that obviously to everybody, my life was unmanageable, and I'm an alcoholic. But my dilemma was step 2. Come to believe in a power greater than yourself that could restore you to sanity. I thought I was doomed, you guys. You know, they kept telling me it's a spiritual program. And all I kept thinking is spiritual, LDS. Spiritual, LDS. I wasn't going back to the LDS church. I wasn't going to. I was dead set against it. And after I got sober for a little bit, I thought, maybe I got to go back to church. And so I went back to the church, and I went back to the bishop. And he says, how can I help you? And I said, I'm here to get disfellowshipped, excommunicated, whatever the hell you got to do. Let's just get it done. And he's like, whoa. He says, slow down. And he says, what have you done so bad? And I said, you think you're going to hear it all from me? That ain't going to happen. I got an AA sponsor, and he heard it all, and I ain't telling you shit. And he says, can you not drink and drug for a couple hours on Sunday? And I said, yeah. And he said, do you think you could show up to church on Sunday? I said, well, yeah. He said, let's start there. He didn't judge me. Of course, I didn't tell him anything. But I went to church, and I did that for a while. And then my wife decided to give it another shot and come back. And we moved to Orem. Got another bishop up there that come and talked to me. And same thing. He said, just keep coming and let's see where it goes. And I baptized my baby daughter in the church. And as soon as I did that, he says, now all we need to do is get you to quit smoking, quit drinking coffee. And I'm like, you have no clue what I've done. That's the least of my problems. And so I ran back to AA. Because you guys didn't judge me. You guys didn't tell me I had to do all of these other things that I wasn't willing to do. In fact, when I walked through the door, you guys handed me coffee. And before I got in the front door, I relapsed on cigarette smoking from all the smoke that was out there. And we used to have smoking meetings at the Catholic church in Provo. You'd walk downstairs and Jesus Christ, you couldn't even see nobody. That's when I first came in. You know, this program, and I admire these old timers that have been around for a while, because they've seen all of these changes, and I've seen quite a few changes. In fact, I just saw it here tonight when the question was asked. I don't know if anybody of you noticed, but when it was asked if I worked the 12 steps and I was willing to sponsor to raise my hand, I don't do that. I never got a sponsor by them raising their hand. I had to go ask them if they would sponsor me. And if you're a guy, you know what that's like from the time you started liking girls. You'd go up and ask them if they wanted to dance, and if they turned you down, fine, I didn't want to do that anyway. You know, that was an experience that I don't want to rob anybody of. I don't want somebody to think just because I'm raising my hand that I'm going to be a good sponsor for them. That's me. That doesn't mean that isn't the right thing or the wrong thing. That's just me. I've had a few sponsors. At this time that I was talking about, I had gone to Jerry, and I told him, I said, Jerry, I think I need to do 90 and 90. And he says, why? And I said, because everybody else is doing it. And if I don't do it, and I start sponsoring somebody, and I tell them to do 90 and 90, I feel guilty because I haven't done what I'm asking them to do, and I don't do something that I don't ask them to do, that I haven't done if I ask them to do it. And he says, why don't you just do a meeting a day? Isn't that like 90 and 90? He says, just do one a day. And I'm like, this guy. I'll tell you a real quick story, and then I'll get to finish that. I called him up one day, and I was having a bad day. And he used to call me Tiger. He says, how you doing, Tiger? And I said, I ain't doing worth a shit. He says, isn't that wonderful? I said, Jerry, I said, I ain't doing worth a shit. And he says, yeah. And I said, isn't that wonderful? I said, what the hell is so wonderful? I ain't doing worth a shit. And he says, I know you well enough to know that it didn't matter if it was a good day or a bad day, you drank and drugged over it no matter what. And today you're having a bad day and you haven't drank and you haven't drugged. Ain't that wonderful? I said, God, Jerry, you can take a pile of dog shit and turn it into an ice cream cone. Doesn't matter what is going on. And that was my sponsor, you know. I told him that I was going to do this 90 and 90. And I was working on my third step, and I get a call from my daughter, my oldest daughter, and she says that her boy's really sick, and she needed to go up to Salt Lake to do something with her family, her other family, and we said, well, bring him over, and the kid was sick, man, he was sick. And she came to pick him up, and she says, so how did he do? And I said, you got to get him to the doctor. And she said, Dad, I've taken him to the doctor, 3 different doctors. And they all tell me to give him a couple of Tylenol and bring him in the morning. And I said, well, I think you need to take him to the hospital and have them check him out. And so she did the next day. And I get a phone call at work, and my wife says, hey, we need to go see Anthony, he's at the hospital. And I said, what's up? And she says, I don't know. She says, we just got to go see him. And I said, all right. And after work? She said, no, now. And I said, all right. So we go down here to Utah Valley Hospital, and we're up, I think it was the 3rd floor, and they come wheeling him out of the room on a gurney, and I'm sitting there talking to him in the hallway. And I said, well, we'll meet you up at the Primary Children's Hospital. I'm not the brightest person in the world, and it takes me a little bit of time for some things to soak in. And they told me that they was taking him up to Primary Children's Hospital on the life flight. That means it's something pretty bad, and it didn't even register. And this is a 4-year-old kid, 4 years old, and he's on the life flight. They're flying him to Primary Children's Hospital. Me and my wife get in our car, and we're going to Primary Children's Hospital to be with his mom and dad and him, and just kind of see what we can do. And we get up there, and everybody's running around, and he flatlined 3 times on the helicopter from here to Salt Lake. And I get on the phone, and I call you guys. I call all of AA, and I'm like, I need some prayers, man. I know you guys believe in a power greater than yourself. I'm still questioning it. I need some prayers. And they said, what's going on? And I told them. And I called my sponsor, who at the time was Big Al. And I said, dude, he ain't going to make it. He said, what do you mean? And I said, he ain't going to make it. And he says, is he still there? And I said, yeah. He said, get off the goddamn phone and get up there and fight with him. He said, right now he's up there fighting by himself. You get off your ass and you get up there and fight with him. And so I took this little glow-in-the-dark rock up to his room, and I put it in his hand. And I said a prayer to whatever. I said, just please take this little boy out of this pain. And please let me accept what the outcome's going to be. Shouldn't have to go through that shit. 4 years old. And I sat there at the end of his bed. First, with all of these prayers, I go out into the hallway and I'm looking for a Mormon bishop, a Catholic priest, whatever. I was looking for anybody to pray. And this lady comes up and starts talking to me and Julie, and she says, you guys need to go in and say your last goodbyes. And we're like, what? And she says, there's nothing we can do. We've got him on the iron lung dialysis machine. We got him on everything possible. And if you guys have ever been up to the Primary Children's Hospital, my God, they have so much stuff up there and at their access. And when they say there's nothing they can do, you're hopeless. And so I sat at the end of his bed and I said a prayer to your God. And I sat there and I couldn't tell you if it was 2 days, 2 hours, 2 minutes, 2 months. I to this very day, I can't tell you how long it was. But I sat at the end of his bed. And all of a sudden he opened his eyes. And he waved at Grandpa. I was there. I was sober. And I was there. If I was drunk, I wouldn't have been there. And 2 weeks later, I was hunting Easter eggs with him at Mountain View High School. And I'm thinking to myself, how the hell does this work? How does that work? They had every machine possible hooked up to this little boy to save his ass. And that didn't work. Your prayers did. That's all I can attribute it to, is your prayers. I don't have a whole lot of time left. I really wanted to talk about this because this is something that I've been really diving in deep this last year. And, we hear the 9th step promises a lot when we're in the meetings, at the end of the meetings. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I'm ready to go make those amends, I want to go make them. I'm ready. And it seems to me like that's how a lot of the people are. I'm ready to do these 9th step amends. Let's go. Well, somebody made some amends to me. And I said, I forgive you. I didn't, but I said it. So when we make our 9th step amends, for me, I need to give that person time to digest it. I need to give that person some time to really feel whether they want to forgive me or not. I can't just sit there like this. All right, you ready? Let's move on. Because chances are, I don't know if you guys have done some 9th step amends or not, but chances are when you go up and talk to one of your amends people, they don't even remember what the hell you're talking about. And then all of a sudden you're bringing it up and you want them to say, yeah, I forgive you. I don't remember anyway, so what the hell? That ain't how it works. That really ain't how it works. In my mind today, now this just happened in this last year. In my mind today, I get to allow that person some time to digest the amends that I had just made. I need that person to really look at, okay, he brought this up, this is something that he did, this is where he was wrong. Am I really willing to forgive him? And I have to allow that process to take place. Because I didn't do that, you guys. I really didn't do that. And I'm still going through a lot of that right now. I'm going through a lot of it. But I'm going to tell you something. I called my sponsor, and my sponsor knows everything that there is. Ramsey knows everything that there is. Those two guys, if I didn't have those two guys in my life, I'd be sitting in a bar. Because I called my sponsor and I talked to him about it, and he was dumbfounded. He's like, okay, I'll talk to you later. And he hung up, and within a couple of minutes later, he calls me back, don't fucking drink no matter what. I said, okay. That's simple. It just took him saying, don't fucking drink no matter what. And then I started getting into the fellowship again. And this fellowship is strong, you guys. If you will allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to get into this program, it will carry you through. And I was with Ramsey and Charlie at a camp out, and Ramsey kept talking about this other extension to recovery and working out and all this. Yeah, whatever. It's good for you. Just shut up. And so finally, we're up at this camp out, and I said, God, all right, I'll go Monday. But you get to do, I made a deal with him like we always did with God, right? God, you get me out of this, and I'll go to church Sunday. I told Ramsey, I'll go Monday. I'll commit to going with you Monday, but you got to do this. And he said, all right. And so I went to this thing called FTR, Fit to Recover. And I went Monday. And I liked it so well Monday, I went Wednesday. I liked it so much on Wednesday, I went Saturday. Now I'm going 4 days a week. And it's kicking my ass, and she's sitting right there. She knows exactly who it is. But you guys, I made a connection, and that's the other one right there, Mindy. I got so many people. I was talking to another alcoholic this morning, and then I'll shut up. We're alcoholic, right? And we can have 10 people in a line and walk down that line of 10 people. And they'll all tell you what a good person you are, how well you are, how much you've helped them, all of these good things. And that one person will say, you're an asshole. And I'll forget about those 9 people giving me all those positive attributes and try to convince that 10th person that I'm not a fucking asshole. And I'll waste all of my goddamn time on that, trying to change their view of me, instead of accepting that the 9 people are the ones that I really need to be around. That's who I am. You know, and I do, I just picked up 23 years. I'm just as much of a basket case today as I was when I came in. I just got more basket cases that are helping me. Before I shut up, Charlie, come here. I told you I was going to do this. It's my night, remember? Charlie just picked up 38 years, and I haven't had the opportunity to give it to him.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now you get to say something. Thanks, guys.
You going to say something? I'm Charlie. I'm alcoholic. And one day at a time. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I was welcomed, and I said, come on back, and told me to get a sponsor and read the book and your life will get better. And it has. It gets better every day, but I couldn't have done it without each and every one of you, because out there on my own I'm a drunk and a drug addict, and so I'll just keep coming to AA. Thank you.